We're broadcasting from the Middle Tennessee Electric Studios.
Visit MTE.com.
Middle Tennessee Electric, serving to make life better since 1936.
This is a WGNS Action Line. Talking with Rutherford County newsmakers
since 1947.
This is a WGNS Action Line. Now your host, Scott Walker.
This morning we have local state representatives joining us in studio, and you can text in any questions you may have, and our phone number is 615-893-1450. This morning we have got with us State Representatives Mike Sparks, Brian Terry, Tim Rudd, and also Charlie Baum. And how are all you guys doing this morning?
Cold.
The wind chill out there I think is 13 or something crazy like that. What all has been happening at the state level, and what are you guys working on right now?
Legislature was shut down the entire week due to the ice. Mainly, the reason why it was shut down wasn't because we couldn't drive up. It was because the employees in Davidson County are without power. They called the legislature off for that. It resumes Monday. So we've had a short first month, but bills have been introduced. I'm personally carrying the E-Verify bill on immigration, which was crafted by the Speaker and his team, working with some of the Trump team to get what was needed done here. We're at the forefront of laws, have been for years on immigration, and this makes us at the very front of ideal legislation that could be passed nationwide. Also, I'm working on a bill for Murfreesboro. We had Peter Demas and some other people that advocate that Nashville was shipping homeless people down here, and this is a bill that all of us in the delegation was asked to support, and they were just putting them on buses and sending them down here, and it's happening in other municipalities around the state. So we made it, the law would make it illegal to do that and could be fined with the city unless they check with the city first if they can take them and they have housing for them.
So like large companies were actually busing?
No, the government. Nashville government was shipping homeless people down here to Murfreesboro on a bus and just letting them off. And we didn't have a place to house them, so it wasn't fair to the homeless. So now this law would make it so they would have to check with the city to make sure it's okay and they have housing for them. If they don't, they'd be finable if they send them down.
So how did they discover that?
I didn't ask that. Well, the homeless advocates. We have about 4 or 5 different advocates here that house and take care of the homeless. And, you know, they were just showing up and they were telling, well, Nashville shipped us down here. So
it's like Nashville said, we don't want the burden on us as far as taking care of extra people. Let's send them to Murfreesboro.
Yeah, and I would assume this is happening in maybe Knox, Hamilton. It could be. I don't know. I don't think the government and Hamilton would be doing it, but we don't know. But it's become a problem that's been reported, so we're trying to deal with it best we can.
Anything legally that we can do as a city? I mean, I understand the bill, but is there anything else we can do on top of that? I
don't think right now there much is. I mean, you could take them to court to get a judge to stop it, I guess.
Seems very cold-hearted.
Well, it could be, and it also could be third-party advocates in Nashville that maybe their shelters are full, so they're doing it. So this all would take care of that, at least on government. Couldn't ship them down here from one city to the other in Tennessee. The other thing I'm working on is it's actually, I thought it would have a very, very hard time passing. It still could, because I'm sure the executive branch won't like it, but I have the Employee Accountability Act, which is becoming very popular. It's getting a lot of press, which I was surprised by. And that is, we have the executive branch when departments send over people to testify against a bill that we're trying to pass that regulates a state department. Their employees blatantly lie in committee, and they lie to fiscal review to give it a huge note to kill the bill. And it happens. It's becoming almost an epidemic now. And we tell committees, hey, they're lying, but they're the department. And unfortunately, if I pass a bill regulating a department, the fiscal review to determine how much it's going to cost to implement, who are they going to call? They're going to call the department to ask how much is this going to cost. Well, they give an inflated number that they have no proof of. And give you an example of that, I wanted to give free parking in the 4 airports around Tennessee that has state parking to veterans, certain qualified veterans like other states have done, so they can park for free. And I needed to put a little, just one initial on the back of the driver's license to say that it qualifies for free parking. It was going to cost $800,000 to implement that in software and all this. The very next week in the same committee, I had another member, Representative Doggett, wanting to put one letter on the back of a driver's license, and that was cost insignificant.
Oh, really? Because it was a letter
And
versus
I yelled out in the committee, I said, this is a miracle. It's a miracle. And the safety come running in. But this goes on all the time, especially with physical review. So this bill would simply state that the chair of a committee has the power to put a state employee under oath. Right now, it's a complicated process to do that. Now the committee would have a option to do that, and it will also be the same to physical review. That anything given a physical review, you could be charged with a misdemeanor. Now, it'll be up to the speakers of the House and Senate whether they pursue legal charges against a state employee. And this is past 17 states. So it's becoming a movement that's needed.
And that type of movement, that also saves taxpayers a lot of money.
It could also give a bill that's meant to help Tennesseans, give it more of a fighting chance. I had one department tell me once I knew they were just lying in committee. And it just frustrates me that the committee liaison and the lawyer of the department lies before a committee to kill a bill. I asked him, why did you do that? He said, we just didn't want to do the work.
They blatantly do it, and then they admit to it.
Yeah, they admit to it to me. They wouldn't admit to it in public. But, yeah, we just didn't want to do the work, so what he told me.
That's crazy.
And so hopefully this will help with that. Also, I've got legislation, the state statute of limitations. This one I thought would be very easy, but I'm not sure it's going to be easy. It just simply states that any statute, these are only civil, these isn't cases like murder and stuff.
Yeah.
On civil actions right now, the state has no limits on statute of limitations. They can wait 80 years if they want before they sue you. But we as a public have only so long to take action against the state. This would simply state that the public is on the same level playing field as the state, and any statute of limitation that applies to a citizen applies to the state. Neither can take action past a certain date.
Yeah.
And I think that this is also passing in multiple states now. And lastly, I'm carrying this for a senator. You know, there's been talk in the past, which I can see the arguments both ways, that buses, school buses, they have to be retired at 200,000 miles or I think 20 years now. This would up that to 300,000, but it would only be for after school. Buses that aren't used, that are explicitly for after-school transportation, whether it be to games, football tournaments, or whether it be to after-school activities or field trips, things like that, that they could use these buses that are over the limit. Of course, they still have to be inspected, not once but twice a year. And as long as safety proves their fitness, because depending on the bus, right now we have to retire, a school bus owner has to retire a bus at a certain age and a certain mileage. But all buses aren't the same. If you're traveling a rural road, and you're going to treat the bus a lot harder than it would be if you're a city route, because the roads are better and the environment's better. So all buses at the same mileage and years shouldn't be treated the same. This would up the, if it's passed, again, it's only for after-school projects and transportation, and the bus would have to be exclusively limited to that. They couldn't be on a bus route during the day and do this at night. That way the bus owner can recuperate a little bit more, and school systems that own their own buses could also use their older buses for a less hectic transportation. And, I did have one more. I had what's called the school board, Rutherford County School Board member brought this to me. It's called the Founding Fathers Act. And right now, even though we have a law in place where civics has to be taught in the schools, many of the schools are not teaching specifically the meaning of the 4th of July, the meaning of the founding of the nation, why it was founded. We want the Constitution and the Founding Fathers, the Bill of Rights, all those things, and our national holiday on the 4th. We want that to be honored and taught. Now, since they're out of school on July 4th, this would mandate that that's taught during the school year, about July 4th. And some of the students, it's sad, but some of the students have come to the principals and say, I don't want to honor July 4th because it's a white man's holiday.
They flat out don't understand, and there's a lack of education there.
That's the whole purpose of the founding of the nation is July 4th, and a lot of the schools don't teach about it. So this just require them to, during those civics courses, that they're to teach specifically the history elements of this, what they have to. I don't like interfering in that way, but when they're leaving out certain holidays and not teaching about it, and their excuse is, well, we're not in session during that period. This is mandating what they have to teach about civics.
It seems like we hear more and more about certain schools, school districts leaving off major chapters of history in America. And I don't know what has changed, but it does seem like there is a big change in what's being taught within the schools when it comes to history.
Yeah, it is. And it's selective.
Yeah.
You know, and people say, well, especially from a conservative viewpoint, I don't like the state interfering in locals at all. I wish that we were just totally separate. But where we are, we've been put in, whether it be on some taxes or certain regulations, we're being involved so that local government doesn't abuse a certain particular field or employee or employment or career, and to make sure that things are done properly. That's when, but I don't like being involved, but I understand why all those who preceded us put us as a barrier to represent the rights of the people so that a government doesn't become too abusive at the local level. So I understand the role we play, but this would be that role with telling school boards that, hey, come on, we passed civics. You need to teach all of civics, not just selected parts of it.
And we had a couple of questions texted in, and one of them was dealing with HOAs. It was saying something in regards to HOAs seem to have too much authority within neighborhoods, and one person writing that their HOA is putting a lien against their house for missing 4 HOA payments, even though they claim they made the 4 payments, and it's a matter of bad bookkeeping on part of the HOA. I guess they were asking, how is that fair, and are there any regulations that really mandate what HOAs can and cannot do?
Well, to give you an example right now, of course, a HOA is a private agreement. We can't change a private agreement that's already in place. We can dictate how a private agreement has to be written in the future, but we cannot interfere as a government with a private agreement to individuals. So that is a contract between the home buyer, and as a realtor for 28 years, most home buyers, it's kind of like looking over a mortgage. It's 500 pages.
Yeah.
I just want the house. Where do I sign?
Yeah.
They don't read it, and they don't know what all's in it. And that's their responsibility, especially when dealing with a lot of money like a house. And I always tell my clients, read the covenants. You're in an HOA. Some HOAs are very lenient. They don't really do anything. They don't have any common areas except maybe an entrance, so there's not much there. Some of them do. They have tennis courts and pools, and they want to keep the aesthetics up, and that's all in there. And of course, a builder keeps control. The developer keeps control of an HOA until it's finished because he wants to protect his investment. And that's the number one complaint I get. I bought my house 10 years ago, and the developer still controls the HOA.
And there's no board.
And that's because he's still got homes to build, and he doesn't want the subdivision to be run down so he can sell all of his property. Then he hands it over. So it's a compromise. Plus, sometimes after the developer is finished and the building is done, the city won't release the bonds, and they can't release the subdivision until the bonds are released by the city or the county government. And sometimes they keep those bonds, they don't release them, the money back, because they're in a disagreement over shrubbery or something. They feel a fence, they don't like the fence, or some disagreement that the city wants the developer to finish or to do, and he says that's not a part of our agreement with you. So they're in that dispute. But the cities can hold up bonds for years so the developer doesn't release it. But back to your question, that is a private agreement. The only thing I know is you can tell him to sue. There's nothing that the government can do because it is a private agreement legally. But you need to read over those HOA and restrictions, whether it's a new home or an existing home, because they do it to protect everyone. But I don't like HOAs either. Luckily, I live in a subdivision where the HOAs virtually non-active.
Seems like almost every neighborhood being built these days has an HOA, but to put a lien against somebody's house over, they say, 4 months of missed payments, which may be $95 to $150 a month or something.
Well, they do make mistakes, because I just got my bill. Every year I got to pay $128, which is mainly for mowing the entrances and keeping up the retention ponds and all that. But I got to pay that, and my HOA bill says you must pay this on time or be a fine, but then it says you owe $0. They made a mistake. Because they'll be saying you haven't paid yet. Well, you said I didn't owe anything. That's I know right. It's a mistake because they've done that before, and they're somehow in their printing. So I do owe, but the bill from the HOA says I don't owe anything. But yet it's due, and there's a fine if I don't pay it at a certain time.
And that's an interesting point you brought up about if the county, the city, whatever, if they said, let's say, for example, had TIF financing involved, the city could hold that over their head, and then there's never an HOA board developed. It's still the developer who's behind the HOA, right? Mm-hmm. That's crazy. That could go on for years.
Oh, yeah. Well, I live in a subdivision, the largest in Murfreesboro. They've been building there for 30 years, and the builder and developer still controls HOA because they're still building.
So does the developer benefit by the money coming in each month?
No, that goes in a fund, to maintain in mine, there's many parks, little small park benches scattered throughout. There are retention ponds, and there's entrances that have to be maintained. And plus there's insurance, liability coverage, all that. But there's no common pool area to be maintained. So that's what all that goes to. So I understand it. But when you move into a development, you need to read that HOA and read the covenant and the restrictions, because when you buy the home, you sign the agreement. That's a part of your package that you're going to abide by the HOA rules.
Wow.
And they could change.
What else is happening within the state? I mean, what other things are going on right now? New laws, proposed bills?
I'll mention that the House Finance Ways and Means Committee next week, I shouldn't say next week, the week after that, is going to have a week of budget hearings where we're going to be hearing from our different state departments to see what their needs are and what kind of funding resources they need in order to provide the services that they want. We have been monitoring revenues as they come into the state. We've got two entities that provide revenue projections and then tell us how revenues are coming in. One is called Fiscal Review, and that's the legislature's entity, and they are currently saying through about the fifth month of the fiscal year, our revenue projections are about $90 million above what was budgeted. And the other entity is the Department of Finance and Administration. I guess that's more on the executive side, and they are telling us that our revenues are coming in about $120 million over projections. And so that's maybe a little bit of good news. I know that the Lee administration has an interest in expanding the number of freedom accounts that we offered last year. Last year we offered 20,000. And we passed a bill to do that said that if the freedom accounts were oversubscribed, we would automatically increase them in number by 5,000. But I have heard of some interest by the Lee administration and others to maybe double the number of freedom accounts from 20,000 to 40,000. That would be an additional 20,000 freedom accounts. And so I thought I'd provide a calculation of what that would cost the state. These freedom accounts roughly provide students with $7,500. It's not exactly that number, but that's a pretty good round number to work with. And so if we were to provide 20,000 additional freedom accounts, then that would have a cost of right around $150 million. That would be the money that the legislature would need to come up with to fund that. I want to add one more thing about that. Occasionally in the media, in the print media, I see that they reference the freedom accounts that we passed last year as costing about $550 million. And I just want to clarify, that was the total cost of the bill that passed. But that bill included more than just freedom accounts. Another big item in that bill were about $200 million worth of teacher bonuses. So the legislation itself cost about $550 million, but the freedom accounts in the bill were right around $150 million. I think the actual price tag was $144 million. That's roughly, again, $7,500 per freedom account multiplied by 20,000 of them. So if you do see in the media that the freedom accounts cost $550 million, not quite all of that was due to the freedom accounts. Even $150 million is a lot of money, but not quite on the magnitude of what is often reported in the media.
And again, when you look at these freedom accounts, how do you go about, if you're a student getting a freedom account, and again, the money to fund that, where does that come from, and does a portion of it come from the Tennessee Lottery? Because all we hear about the lottery is education, education, education.
They are funded by the state, and that's why the House and Senate Finance Ways and Means committees have a big responsibility to find that money if that's an initiative that the General Assembly and the Lee administration want to provide. But the freedom accounts themselves are applied for online. Currently, about half of them are awarded to low-income households, and the other half are awarded without that kind of an income restriction. The first year, when 20,000 were available, the program was oversubscribed, and what that means is more than 20,000 people applied for them, so all 20,000 were awarded. We have just opened the online portal for these freedom accounts to be applied for the next academic year. And I believe the last I heard, somewhere between 50 and 60,000 applications had come in. So the 20,000 that we're currently funding are in high demand. The program is oversubscribed. We could double the program to 40,000 and it would still be oversubscribed.
And what age group is typically receiving the benefits of that Freedom account?
I think it's all ages. The only restriction is half of them go to lower income households.
Again, what else is happening within the state? Brian Terry?
Thank you for having us on today. For me, a couple of things that I've obviously been in my district. The landfill issue is always big, and then obviously being chairman of health. Those are a couple of things that I've been working on. From a health perspective, one of the biggest issues, and we'll find out, I guess, on the state of the state, been trying to work on getting a new medical school building in Memphis. The building that they've got there, it's actually 3 buildings that were donated decades ago.
Would this be under UT or University of Memphis?
University of Tennessee,
Okay.
yeah. But they're pretty pitiful buildings, and they're locked in how many students they can attract, and they're having difficulty attracting the best of the best. And so we're hopeful that we'll get us a new medical school building, increase the number of students from, I think right now they're at 175. We're looking at potentially 225 to 250 students. And so that's one of the big things that I've worked on over the summer. We're hopeful that we'll get that in the budget. I met with President Boyd a week or so ago on that as well. And to that point, with the One Big Beautiful Bill, there was within that something called Rural Health Transformation Plan, in which there's $50 billion up for grabs for all the states. And it's a 5-year plan. And I think Tennessee got awarded $206 million from that. And so I'm going to be meeting with the governor's staff on Monday, and we'll see kind of what he may have in line from a legislative standpoint. And, for me, the big issue, we're facing a upwards of 120,000 physician shortage nationwide by 2034, 2035, something like that. Tennessee potentially is facing about 6,000 physician shortage. And believe it or not, Tennessee is actually like one of 5 states that's still attracting physicians, but we just can't keep up with the growth. And so my big concern on the Rural Health Transformation Plan is, if say we get a building and could potentially attract somebody, but then you put in policies that are detrimental to attracting healthcare providers or physicians, then you've shot yourself in the foot on that. And so that's one of the things that I'm trying to figure out from a balancing perspective. And then the landfill, that's the number one issue in my district. And, as Tim had mentioned, the private contracts, I've got a couple of caption bills and stuff that I'm working on. I've talked to the AG's office and our legal services on things. And obviously I keep in contact with both mayors. And the problem that we've got, much like the HOA having a private contract, the city and the county, they have private contract, a host benefit agreement with the landfill. And unfortunately, a lot of stuff that we might want to do, they're under contract and we can't override their contracts. And so we're kind of stuck. So any idea that I've had or whatever, you sit down, you talk to the AG's office. I had several meetings with them this summer on some bills, and they're like, great idea, but it's not going to impact your landfill. It might impact another landfill or a new landfill, but it's not going to impact yours. And so those are kind of the issues that we've had. That the landfill, Middle Point's looking to vertically expand out there, and there's a lot of issues with that. And so I actually found out this week, I got an email from TDEC, and I called them and had some conversations with them. Their application is incomplete. And so there's a process by which, really it's a potentially a 3-step process. One, you have to figure out which type of application you're going to file. And Middle Point filed what's called a major modification application. And I believe, and I think the city believes, and the regional board that Donna Barrett's on also believes that it's not a major modification, it's an expansion. I mean, whether it goes horizontal or vertical, if you're increasing the footprint or increasing what you were originally scheduled to have, that's expansion. And federally, that's what the definition is that's an expansion. So the city has filed an injunction against BFI and Middle Point, saying that they filed the wrong application. By statute, though, TDEC has to review that application regardless of which one they have filed. And so they have 45 business days to do that, and they were in that process, and they found out that application is incomplete. And so there's a pause on that for right now. And so they've got to go back and, I guess, redo their application, and then we'll see whether or not that injunction holds. But then if they say, yeah, your application's complete, then there's going to be, I think it's a 240 business day process by which TDEC will review. And again, that starts and stops, and there can always be a pause button, but trying to see if there's anything that we can do to stop this potential expansion. But those are some things that we're working on.
Hey, Dr. Terry, explain to the listeners about the Jackson law, and there's efforts by Republican Waste Management to overturn that and change it. Explain what protections that give us and what they're up to there.
Great question. And so in this process, if you do a major modification, then only TDEC really has to review that. There will be a public comment period, but ultimately TDEC and the commissioner has the say on whether or not that major modification goes forward. If, however, it's deemed that it's an expansion, which we all believe that is an expansion, then it has to go through the regional boards and it has to go through the Jackson law. And so the Jackson law, if you opted into it, which our locals have opted into it, essentially they can override object to and override and essentially veto an expansion of a landfill. And then the regional board, they have a 10-year plan. And if an expansion does not fit into the 10-year plan for their region, then they can block it as well. And so our region is Cannon, Coffee, Warren, and Rutherford, and they have blocked it before, and the courts have upheld that. And that was a law that I passed a couple years ago that actually, in all these years trying to do something to deal with the landfill, I passed a law that said that if the courts ruled that, in favor of the Jackson law or the regional boards, the commissioner could not override the courts. The way the law had been written was even if the courts ruled that there is no expansion, the commissioner still could come in behind that and grant the expansion. And so I passed a law that said that can't happen. The commissioner has to accept that. And so this past March, when that got adjudicated, that put an end to the northern expansion that they tried. And so that was a positive for us. But yeah, having local control, particularly when it deals with your water, your safety, your property values, I mean, to me, that's huge. Yeah. And this trying to skirt the system and trying to say it's a major modification when you're going up there, you're blocking the flight path, the FAA issues, and all that. Even MTSU's opposed to this expansion.
I'm trying to imagine, at some point, and may already be, it's going to be the highest point of elevation in Rutherford County if they continue to expand upwards, which is crazy to think about. And the circumference, if you look down on that large piece of land, how much higher can you physically go and that still be safe?
Well, and therein lies the issue is that there's a problem with the FAA as far as flights, because there's buzzards and stuff going around that area, and you have the flight path that comes in. And so there is a major issue if they raise that. Just because they're wanting to expand vertically doesn't mean that, there's not just local issues, there's federal issues here as well.
I guess, in other words, if it were at sea level, let's say, then those buzzards and birds would be flying much lower, but the higher the mountain gets, the higher the birds fly as well.
Are you saying that Republic needs to relocate and build a new airport for the city of Murfreesboro?
I think they need to relocate their landfill.
And I know we only have a few minutes left. We had lots of questions here. The folks texted in everything about libraries to, community values, and, well, there's a lot. But, Mike, let's head to you real quick. Mike Sparks is here as well.
Well, I just want to say thank you, Brian. Brian's passionate about the landfill. We're downstream, Smyrna, Laverne, and I represent North Murfreesboro, and we care about this. A few years back, I was chairman of Consumer, and we had a bill, and somehow we got talked about, or I brought up the landfill, and I said, we're downstream of this, and I was worried about our water quality. And it was a week later, I seen an announcement from TDEC that said, don't eat the bass in Percy Priest Lake. Well, what was ironic is I brought up Percy Priest Lake and bass the week earlier, saying that when I have grandkids, which I have two now, just left them just now, and I said I want to be able to take the grandkids out, go fishing, just like my dad did, just like Major Walls used to take me fishing, and catch a bass and take it home at night, fried up in the pan, and then that announcement come out. I call those confirmations. And it's a serious issue. So folks in Smyrna, Laverne, I know our county commissioners do care. I know Mayor Carr cares. And but it's almost, I'm kind of sitting here not chuckling, but it's so weird to think about the flight path in those areas. And this is something that I know our entire delegation cares about, our entire county commission cares about. But one thing I'll share, I just got off the phone with a father that I'm working on a resolution for. He found his daughter hung in her closet. She was only 14 years old. So the areas of mental health among our teens, among adolescents, and even among adults is a serious issue. It's hard to legislate your way out of these things, so we've got some legislation on that. If folks care about mental health, and I know our teachers do, look up the book, The Anxious Generation. Ran it last year. I'm going to do it again this year. Going back on Chairman Rudd was talking about the school buses, and I applaud Tim, and that's going to be a big issue because I was there when we expanded 3 years, and you talk about a powerful lobbying group. You wouldn't think school bus manufacturers are that powerful, but they're listening right now. But here's who else is listening: school bus owners and drivers. So I know Clarissa Smith's listening, Cindy DeMumbrian's listening, and others. If you own a school bus, y'all need to start coming together to help Tim on this bill. Even on my bill, which really, we're the most restrictive in the world. I can't make this stuff up, folks. We're more restrictive than Cuba, Russia, Latvia to drive a school bus. We're the only state in the world you got to be 25 to drive a school bus. So we see a shortage of school bus drivers. And I appreciate David Settles, who's on the school board, Murfreesboro, come up and testified. Ironically, he's also the president of NAACP. He come up and testified to help me. He says go to 21. Tim helped me get the bill out of committee. Robert Stevens helped me get the bill out of committee. We passed it on the House side. The Senate, not so easy. It fell by one. I don't have powerful lobbyists to help me. So, folks, if you're a school bus driver and you care about this, you're a parent, get behind Tim's bill and help Tim on this. Also, I've got introduction of legislation trying to cut taxes off fresh fruit and vegetables. Tennessee is one of the most obese states in the nation. We're ranked number 45th or 44. And my bill has more likely a passage because of the fiscal note's much lower than the $1 billion, roughly, of just cutting the taxes off groceries. So it's easy to say, let's just cut tax off groceries, but we're going to pick up that fiscal note somewhere. But anyways, school bus drivers, get a hold of Tim and help Tim on this piece of legislation he's running.
Now, in the past, there have been reductions in taxes on grocery or certain grocery items. Where does that stand today? Is that still something that is in play?
Go ahead, Tim.
Those were temporary tax reductions, and when they expired, the grocery tax went back to its original level. I think one summer we cut the grocery tax for 3 months, and one summer we cut it for 1 month, but they have not been perpetual.
And when you say it was cut during those durations, was it fully cut to where state and local taxes were completely cut out? Because I think right now 9.75% approximately in Rutherford County is what you pay in state and local taxes. But was that completely cut back then, or was it only cut by around 4%?
I was just saying to Charlie, no, I think when we cut the grocery tax, when we cut taxes like that, usually because we had a surplus. We may not have that same money left over each year. It's a way for us to give it back without it going to tourists. Like with restaurants, everybody eats at restaurants, but very few tourists buy groceries. But I think when we do that, did we make up the difference so the locals didn't lose any money?
I'm sure the locals were held harmless. Either that part of the tax wasn't reduced or we made up that for them. We would not have impacted their budget adversely in that way.
And I'm thinking locally, $100 in groceries used to probably be a regular amount to spend each month, but now families are paying $300-400 every 2 weeks for groceries, and it makes a big difference when you start adding it all up.
You got to keep one thing in mind. There's only so much money there, and it fluctuates each year. Like whoever thought $1 billion they need to spend on hurricane victims in East Tennessee. But we had to do that, and that left us without funding other things. But if we cut $500 million or $1 billion a year to alleviate grocery taxes permanently, well, there's only two places to cut that much money, really. That's either education, money we give local schools, or health care. We have to cut those two. Taxes are going to go up locally to pay for schools, and because we pay a huge percentage of the local schools budget. And the other is if we cut back health care, people are going to be without coverage. Could cost a life. So It's not just a matter of cutting $1 billion out and here it is. We have to figure out a way to pay for it permanently.
Sure.
That's right. The two biggest items in the budget are education and health care. And a third big need is transportation, money for our roads. The Department of Transportation in the state has said we're $55 billion behind on our roads. So if you cut the grocery tax, it's going to impact some of these other areas.
And that's a couple years ago when the impact, what was it, the bill that for the road transportation
Improve Act.
Yeah, Improve Act that came through. They cut the grocery tax and raised the gas tax, and so when you do that, the cost of goods and services goes up, and even though your tax is down, it ended up being a wash. And therein lies the issue is that, for the grocery tax, again, the more you eat, like your bill, I think you had an amendment on the Improve Act to try to do that years ago.
Was you proud of all that? All of us come together?
Yeah, absolutely. That was
With Democrats? Try to stop
it. It was bipartisan to try to stop it.
Last year in office, we had to face the gas tax.
We're out of time, but we did have a couple of text message questions, and they feel like they're important because locally we're hearing more and more about this. But they were asking about Trey Hargett, the Secretary of State's involvement within libraries across the state, and what led him to say basically, well, we need to cut out certain books from local libraries. And now we're hearing a lot about this here at the local library with the local Rutherford County Library Board and taking books out of the library. What happened with all of that?
Well, it's not Trey. Well, first, Trey's responsibility under the Constitution is he's in charge of libraries. And what he's doing is not what he's doing on his own. He's following laws passed by the state legislature, what books can and can't be. And also, it's like we pass laws giving that power to school boards to remove certain books, but we've already passed that. He's just obeying state law.
And so now it's up to local libraries, such as the Rutherford County Library Board, to say, looks like we now have to remove XYZ books.
That would be correct if they meet the criteria and the definition of what the state passed.
And Mike, you were saying what now?
Marsha Blackburn's going to be on the radio with me Sunday night. I was spelling out to you. Yeah, Marsha Blackburn's going to join us Sunday night. Conversation Mike Sparks 5 to 6. And I applaud Trey Hargett with what he's doing. I'll be honest with you. I don't want a bunch of craziness in our libraries. I know you ain't got enough airtime for us on this, but I don't want a bunch of crazy indoctrination in our libraries. That's my opinion. I think I can't speak for everyone. That's just my thoughts.
But it seems like a dangerous slope to be on because
it's dangerous for certain people that have certain agendas. Let's just face it. People, it's a crazy times we're in, folks, and let's just face it. As a Christian, we need to start speaking up, and you can't legislate our way out of problems. We've seen brokenness. We got to build a $400 million jail. Addiction's rampant. Mental health rampant. Folks need to come together and try to solve these problems. But my heart's out to Trey with the great job that he does, especially with our elections and Representative Rudd. The best elections, most transparent in the nation. Most secure. So shout out to Trey for the great job he's doing.
I wish we had more time, but we are over, and we appreciate all of you joining us this morning. Again, with us today in studio, we have had State Representatives Mike Sparks, Brian Terry, Tim Rudd, and Charlie Baum.
The Action Line on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna. Listen and watch at WGNSradio.com.
This is Peter Demas, and our family is inviting your family to come eat with us at Demas's restaurant. We're trying to give them a place where they can eat with their family that's not fast food. We want to create an atmosphere where we can sit down and just have a good old-fashioned family dinner. But unfortunately now, most people can't do it at home. So, two people are working, the kids' activities, and so what we're doing is we provide that and we make it affordable. Come eat with us at Demas's restaurant.